everybody. Steve Politi from NJ Events Media, joined by Keith Sargent, James Cratch for the 6-year build podcast. I'm trying that one out. See how that one works. Coming off the Buffalo loss, 42-13 defeat. And I got just a quick story to tell you guys here as we get started. So as you know, I left the stadium, went straight to the airport, flew to Houston for the Giants game. And I get to Houston. I get to the hotel. It's after midnight. I just wanted to decompress. So what do? Of course, you put on the highlights. And I put on the college football highlights, and I see, this dramatic Stanford comeback against Oregon. I see Army, of all teams, Army going into Oklahoma and taking Oklahoma to overtime. And I see this dramatic Old Dominion game against Virginia Tech with, where Old Dominion somehow beats Virginia Tech and the fans storm the field and the players are filled with joy and the coach is crying and talking about how it's, the third best thing that's ever happened to him after getting married and the birth of his children. And the broader point is this, that I had to turn it off because it was making me legitimately sad because, look where we are. We're stuck here just when the season is supposed to be getting good in college football. Teams 1-3, battling toward 1-11. I mean, just misery, controversies. I just feel bad for the players, for the fans, for us. I feel bad for you, Sarge, even for you. That's how bad I feel.
Yeah, can you hold on one second? I'm trying to update my LinkedIn resume to try to see if I can cover another beat. I mean, it's a little. I mean, you just pretty much described my life. I mean, I've been covering this since 2001. There's been one rebuild after another, and one quarterback controversy after another. It's just thanks for depressing me. I appreciate it. I can't wait to see where this podcast goes.
Right, yeah, we're off to a great start. This is like terms of endearment for podcasts here. It's a really cheery thing.
That's a great name. That could be a good name for a new podcast.
You like that?
I have to say, as you guys know, little inside baseball. Since I got on the beat, I've got a new apartment in New Brunswick, and I had a box, and I was walking by it, and on the top of the box was I haven't unpacked yet. Was the sport cover from the state newspaper in Columbia on October 10th, 2010, which is the day after South Carolina upset Alabama when I was a junior in college. And I remember that day being on the field for the final 4 minutes. You felt like you were at the center of the college football universe.
Right.
And then to be at Buffalo Rutgers this past Saturday.
That is a little bit further. That's a further constellation in the college football universe.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes. I don't know. It just seems really grim. And all right. So you guys were there. I didn't get to the press conference today. You listen into Chris Ash. I mean, does he have answers? Does he have any? I mean, what is the mood of the head coach?
I thought he opened his press conference by apologizing to the fans, saying that he understands their frustration. But at the same time, I don't really think there's much he can say, beyond what he's said in the past. It's a process. They're rebuilding. They have to play better. They're young. But the thing is, this fan base does not want to hear that anymore. No. And until they get better on the field, it's just not going to get much better.
Right.
I got to tell you too. It's almost like Chris Ash could not have gone followed in the footsteps of Kyle Flood and said 1-0 or ever uttered the phrase 1-0 or any of the Kyle Flood isms that irritated the fan base. The "it's a process" line, which he's used a couple times. Steve, you remember? I mean, Graciano in year 2, year 3, year 4 was killed. I mean, the fan base it made people want to vomit in their mouths every time they heard it. I mean, look, he's going to talk about, he's already talking about being young, all the first and second year players.
And by the way, that's something that Greg used to say too. Greg used to say it's a young team every year.
Yes,
not to interrupt, but that was another thing, another Gregism.
No, but all that's well and good. But when you look, Graciano had some stinkers. I mean, you remember some of those games early on, New Hampshire, Buffalo, UConn. The difference in those games, though, Steve, is those games were close. Rutgers, got their doors blown off against Buffalo. They, got blown out against Kansas, where you can't go into the press conference. You can't go 2 days later and say, well, we're not that far off. Another thing that Chris Ash said today, we're not that far off. Well, yeah, you are. When you're down 35-6 at halftime to Buffalo, a MAC level team, you are far off. And
Right,
it's really hard to use that as a process, and we're a young line when you're not even competitive in these games.
Yep, and Kratch, you made a great point in your film review. Just that Buffalo called off the dogs. I mean, they going into halftime. They were like, let's just run this out here. And in the second half, this was not the same aggressive team they were in the first half. That could have been uglier.
Yeah, and I think that gets back to I think it was one of the more maybe one of the flashpoints of the press conference is I asked Chris Ash because look, fans are wondering it. They give up all these big plays on the field. They have all this outsized noise. I asked him straight up, has this team given up? Have they quit on the coaching staff? Have they quit on the season? He was adamant that they haven't, and he pointed to their defensive effort in the second half against Buffalo. They gave up, I think, 376 yards of offense in the first half and 69 in the second half. He pointed to that, and I asked him, do you think that Buffalo attacked you on defense in the second half the same way they did in the first half? He said yes. I don't 100% agree with him. I thought Buffalo was basically just trying to get out of there, with the game in hand. I did not think they were pushing, the ball in the same way that they were in the first half. But that's what he's stuck with. It was a better defensive effort in the second half, but I think Buffalo had a lot to do that well. And I tweeted that as I was watching the game back on Sunday that I thought, it was kind of remarkable restraint for a Buffalo team that, hey, they're 4-0. They're getting votes in the AP Top 25. They probably believe that they're going to go undefeated, win the MAC, and potentially be in a position like Western Michigan was a couple of years ago to get to the Cotton Bowl or the Orange Bowl as that Group of 5 representative. And I several high-ranking Buffalo athletic department officials, and I remember one of the coaches' wives liked the tweet. So clearly they think
why are high-ranking members of the Buffalo administration following you on Twitter? I like that.
I don't know if they were liking it because I was saying, hey, this team could go to a New Year's Six bowl, or they were liking it because I was pointing out that they called off the dogs. Either way, I think they called off.
See, I don't know why you had to ask that question. I mean, clearly that film review has made it worldwide now at this point.
Of course, that's a great point, Sarge. I forgot the reach of journalism like that. It could really it goes. There are no boundaries for that thing. All right. So speaking of the film review, you made another great point that the problems do not seem solvable. I mean, now what? We got Indiana. We got 17.5-point underdogs. I mean, what can they fix? Can it get better? I mean, what are we looking at here?
Well, it's going to start with the quarterback thing. And once again, Chris Ash for the second straight week was non-committal. Right off the bat, and it's funny, you can watch the video later, but right off the bat, Chris Ash said, we're not going to talk about the quarterback. So, of course, I follow up by following up another question, and you tried to be as adamant as possible. We're not going to talk about the quarterback. So then I threw it at him. I said, well, if you do go with Gio, and look, I like Gio, you like Gio. I think you wrote a column endorsing Gio for the starting job going forward. So it's nothing against Gio, but I will say this. The pass offense was 125th nationally a year ago. Gio played 8 games. He completed 45% of his passes in those eight games 7 games last year. He averaged 70 passing yards per game. What makes you think that the passing offense will be any better with Gio if you go Gio instead of Art? And to his credit, Ash, answered the question, said it's a great point, and that's part of the evaluation. So until we know who the starting quarterback is, I don't really know what this team is going to be, what this offense is going to be, because, if they do go back to Gio, you would think that they're going to try to, manage the game and try to play conservative. So as of now, it's Monday now. I think we're going to see another week in which, Chris Ash plays coy with the quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, I thought I did write that they should go with Gio just because I think it's in the program really is in a crisis situation where they need to, and I know it sounds crazy. What is one win going to matter? I think it's going to matter a lot. I think they have to show something. And you've got this experienced quarterback who has rallied them before, who the team believes in, who's a captain, who's a leader, who won Big Ten games, who's got experience. And, I mean, I know Sikowski did not lose the game for them last week by any stretch of the imagination, but he did. I mean, he did impact what happened against Kansas. He's prone to mistakes. And, I don't know, is it really helping his development? Cratch, you disagree with this point. So you give me the other side of this.
Well, I mean, just to start with, Sarge said, if they go back to Gio, he, presume they're going to play conservative. I mean, for what? Like, last year they had a good defense. They don't have that this year. So it's great. You can go out there and you can play conservative and not turn the football over and try to run the ball. And I think it's still going to be 28-6 at halftime or 35-6. Because in a way, that's what they did on Saturday against Buffalo. And John McNulty even said this. They came out, it was almost like they wanted to start Art at quarterback, but not really let him play. So a lot of short passes, a lot of handoffs. And then with, 4 minutes to go, 5 minutes to go for halftime, they yank him because it's 28-6 and Chris Ash says he wants to see something different. But Art didn't really do anything, as you said, Steve, to impact the game on Saturday. If anything, if they don't jump off sides on that Wildcat play on 4th and 1, maybe that scores. Okay, so now Sikowski could have easily had 2 touchdown drives, and the game could have been 28-14. I mean, are you gonna pull him at that point? I just thought the way they kind of stuck with him after the Kansas game, which I agreed with, then he goes out there and shows improvement, shows progress, makes better decisions with the football. The defense gets gashed. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, we got to do something different. I mean, Art, Gio, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is if the defense is going to give up 50-yard plays every other series.
Right.
They haven't been, Steve, they have not been able to complete like an ordinary screen play. Cratch, in his film review, the infamous film review, had a great point. He had a photo of this play in which the ball hits the offensive lineman's the back of his helmet, and the pass was intended for Blackshear. If Blackshear makes that catch, he's probably running for a 30-yard gain. That's not the offensive coordinator's fault. That's execution. And again, I like Gio. Gio threw that pass. I mean, you can't tell me that the offense is going to be that much better with Gio. I get that, he's rallied the team in the past. We're not talking about 2017, the team that had a pretty good defense and you could manage the game and win that way. I still think you're going to need to score some points, and I think Cratch is right. I think, you're blaming Art for failures of a 4th and 1. One of your better offensive linemen in Jonah Jackson jumps off a false start, and then you have to settle for a field goal. I think Art is taking too much. I think he took too much of the blame this past week.
Clear. I mean, I don't think the offense would be much better with Tom Brady. I honestly don't know if it matters at all.
No, but
they don't have skill players. They don't have a line. They can't block.
They can't sit there and say, well, this is how we won 3 Big Ten games last year, because the biggest factor in that whole equation is gone. The defense it's bad. Like it's very, very bad.
What happened? What? I mean, how do they keep on giving up these big plays? I understand. You knew the defensive line wasn't going to be good. Losing Bless Austin was a big blow. But I mean, you got a guy like Isaiah Wharton Sr. He gets beaten coverage. You got, just the entire secondary and that 1 touchdown to Buffalo. I mean, I don't know what were they doing? I have no idea. Like I watched the clip and I'm like, who was supposed to be where? It's just, what happened to this defense?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's some it's injuries. I mean, obviously Bless Austin would have been a key player back there. I guess you can say depth, although I think that you have to be very careful if you're Chris Ash and the coaching staff blaming depth, because when you had the situation with the credit card fraud allegations in the summer, you kind of downplayed that. Now you can't at 1-3 and in crisis suddenly retroactively say that's been Crusher. They've had injuries elsewhere. I mean, I think one of the biggest issues this team has is they get no consistent pass rush. And we can pick and choose, play cut-ups here and there where they got pressure and they force a throwaway or whatever. But let's go to the first touchdown. I mean, Isaiah Wharton's one-on-one with Anthony Johnson. That's not a great matchup. Yes, no. Isaiah Wharton, a 4th-year starter, has to do a little bit better. But Anthony Johnson's going to be a first-round pick in the draft in a couple of months. And when there's no pass rush and there's no safety help, what do you think's going to happen? Sometimes it's bad tackling. Every week they don't tackle well, and then the coaching staff tries to claim that the tackling's not that bad except for isolated incidents. But it's those isolated incidents that kill you. Yeah. It's sort of like Steve, when you were in Houston, I was, like if you have a left tackle or a right tackle who's struggling and he gets killed on 3 out of 60 plays, well, those 3 plays destroy the game. Yep. So there's so many issues with this defense, and I think it comes back to the fact that if you play Gio on Saturday against Indiana, and I think there's a very good chance they're going to do that as we tape this on a Monday, I think you might get in a situation where it's 28-7 at halftime, and now they're like, well, we got to put Art in because we got to take shots down the field, and he's our guy to take shots down the field. And then once again, like, what have you accomplished with all this quarterback indecision?
Really, not much is what it's clearly going to be the answer. All right, here's a question I have for you that I've gotten from a ton of readers. People want to know, where is Pat Hobbs? I mean, is it, this is Hobbs went on Twitter to defend Chris Ash against one of the silly lists that we all do on CBS Sportsline, put him on the hot seat. Now he kind of is on the hot. I mean, not on the hot seat necessarily to lose his job, but he certainly is taking heat from people. Is it up to the athletic director to say something here? I mean, what do you think, Sarge?
Yeah, I mean, I did talk to him, and he didn't want to talk publicly, which is his right. I don't think he's ready to do that. The one thing that the sense I got from him is he understands the frustration, and I don't think I think the word that one of the words that he uttered was unacceptable. So I mean, I think that's clearly he was not pleased by the result. I found it fascinating that after the game, it's just the little things that you notice. So the team does their thing and they're walking off the field. They're walking toward the alma mater. And Pat Hobbs walks there to the place first, and he's looking around, scanning like the stands, and he sees like how empty the stands were. I mean, there had to have been 8,000 fans at the end of the game, maybe 5,000 fans, and he noticed it. He let it soak in. So it's not like he doesn't notice it. I just don't think it goes back to what he told me a week ago too. He's not making any evaluations during the season. So any evaluation that he's going to make, it'll be at the end of the year. And at this point, I don't think he really wants a statement out there that's going to, publicly endorse him one way or the other.
Wow. All right.
And I think that the thing with Pat too is 90% of the fan base, unless he comes out and says that he's, made a change in the personnel, they're not going to be satisfied with what his message is.
Right. There's nothing.
He's obviously not doing that. So what else is he going to do? Say?
Look, I mean, I still think too, and it goes back to, what do we know about Pat Hobbs? Is like his coaching maneuver. Anytime he's made a change, is more often than not, has been he let the contract run out. Whether it was gymnastics or softball, he's letting the contract run out. Chris Ash still has 5 years. It goes back to the $9.8 million. We'll have plenty of time between now and the end of the year if they do go 1-11. I'm pretty sure we'll get a sense of it come early November, which way this is headed. But right now, nothing changed from last week. I mean, there's 9.8 million reasons why Chris Ash is going to be here for the long term.
And that makes a great transition into true or false. I'm going to put this one here. I'm going to do the true or false. This is going to be a weekly staple on the true or false. So you know what's coming for the first true or false. You'll know it's going to come next week and every week of this podcast. True or false? If Rutgers goes 1-11, Chris Ash will be fired. Has anything changed to change your answer? True or false, Sarge?
False.
Cratch?
False.
True or false? Chris Ash is right. The team hasn't quit on the coaches.
Wow. I'll say true for now, but I think they need to show a lot more on Saturday against Indiana, because I don't think Indiana's calling the dogs off in the second half the way Buffalo did.
I'm like that person in class. I'm just going to cheat off Cratch's answer and say true, but I feel the same way. I think we'll really know it come 3:00 on Saturday.
There's a difference between quitting and sucking. True or false? Redshirting Sikowski makes sense given the way this season has gone.
False.
True or false? Ash should give Jonathan Lewis a shot at quarterback.
True.
False.
Well, what do you got to lose? But I mean, I hear you. Maybe not starting him, but I'd put him out there. I mean, why not? True or false? Go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, can I just answer? I know we normally circle back. I don't want to, I know it's only true or false, but I'll say this. Okay. I've been covering this way too long, and I know that Jonathan Lewis, in a lot of ways, he's the fancy recruit. They build him as like the quarterback of the future last year. He played some games. He completed 35% of his passes. He got beat out by 2 other quarterbacks in training camp. We don't spend all this time talking about guys like Trey Sneed, who a couple years ago was a ballyhooed running back recruit, and now he's nowhere near the top of and nowhere near to be found. We don't talk about Tyler Hayek, who was the most highly touted of one of the most highly touted guys of a wide receiver group 2 years ago. We don't talk about all these other guys who had a big offers or were supposed big recruits, and they're not playing. We're talking about Jonathan Lewis because, he's a quarterback and everyone focuses on the quarterback. Bottom line, he got beat out by 2 other quarterbacks in training camp. Bottom line, he completed 35% of his passes, in the time that he got last year. Yeah, that's the bottom line. So I'm going to say false. I'm going to stick by it. I just don't think that we should see, I think Sikowski or Gio.
Wow. Okay.
I can respond? Not really.
You do it. Rebut. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with you, Sarge, 100%. And look, I think Ash, he was asked about it today. He was asked about it last week. He's not going to come out and say it, but he's clearly signaling the message that they don't think he is good enough compared to Gio and Art. 100% understand that. But I think there's a couple issues here. He is a quarterback. He's a Jersey kid. He's much ballyhooed. He comes from one of those top parochial programs that Rutgers fans think that, the key to, the kingdom is to get kids from those programs. But I think the other thing is I go back to this. He played a little bit last year, didn't do so great, but he had some flashes. Rutgers, and it's not, I'm trying to relitigate their preseason media policy. They had 1 scrimmage open to the public during training camp.
True.
And that was a day where Jonathan Lewis went 3 for 3 and completed 2 nice deep balls. So that is the only glimpse the fan base got of him. And as they said, through the spring and through the summer, he's making strides. I know it was very small sample size, but that's what people saw. They came out to the ballpark to see the team on Fan Appreciation Day. They saw him look really good. And I think that's why they want to see that.
I'm not blaming that.
Go ahead.
I'm not blaming the fans. I'm not blaming the fans in any way. I don't blame them for wanting to see it and asking the question. I'm not blaming them. What I'm saying is sometimes you just have to trust. I don't trust the coaches, most of the time. It's the reason why we ask questions. But, if, 2 offensive coordinators in a row have said, Jonathan Lewis is not good enough to start. It wasn't just John McNulty. Jerry Kill made that assessment as well. 2 offensive coordinators in a row. Then I'm just going to, believe that he's the 3rd best quarterback on the roster right now.
No, I understand that, and I don't know if he necessarily needs to start, but I do think, especially if you're going to be losing, if you're going to get blown out every week, at some point you got to put the kid in the second half and give him a chance. And look, if he flops, then the whole world sees that, and fans stop asking the questions. But at some point, I mean, what do you have to lose? This, it's garbage time. Like, you need to develop players, and look, he's in line potentially to be the backup quarterback next year if he stays and Art's here and Gio graduates. So I think at this point it's about development, and this, what do you got to lose? Like, put him in a situation. Doesn't have to be a start, but he should play in the second half at some point if every week is going to be a blowout that's over by halftime.
I'm tie-breaking vote with Kratch on that one. Absolutely. Just give him a shot. Eventually, it doesn't have to be more than a few series or something, but if you're going to be down 40-0 again against Indiana, why not? All right, true or false? Rutgers will be double-digit underdog in the rest of its games.
False.
False? Sorry.
Yeah. Like a 9-point game.
9.5 points against Illinois.
So I'll say false on technicality.
All right. True or false? Penn State is going to stun Ohio State to prove it's the best Big Ten team.
True.
False. False.
Why? I think that's going to be a good one.
It's going to be a great game.
I'd like to go to that game. Let's go to that game instead. What do you say? True or false? Ash has players who could help this team now, but is wisely redshirting them. True or false?
Ooh.
Are there players that are being held out that could help the team, but for development purposes?
I'm going to say false.
False.
I don't think it's development purposes. I just think for some reason we like Jalen Jordan, Zahir Lacewell. It's like they talk about getting them in the game, and I think they have to get them in the game, but they don't do it each week for some reason.
Yeah, I'll say false.
True. That's a bad sign. True or false? Last week's podcast was our most listened to ever. I know the answer here. True or false?
True.
Actually, no, it was the least downloaded ever. People have given up on us. All right, and finally, true or false?
Wow. That's a killer, man.
We're screaming into an echo chamber. All right, true or false? We're all overreacting. True or false?
False.
False.
I think we're reacting.
We're not overreacting.
This is not good.
I got an email, and I will say, and this is the thing that's stunning to me about this. Like, even when, there are very few fans who are like, dude, it's year 3. I mean, Rutgers, we're developing a program. I finally got one from a guy who was like, I personally, when they hired Chris Ash, when he inherited this mess, I wrote off the first 2 years. I'm considering this his first year. He's got 5 more years to go. He's got to build a program. I knew this was good. The first email I've gotten from a fan who, kind of is taking the long-term view of this thing.
So Mrs. Ash emails you sometimes?
Oh man, ouch! But you totally disagree. You think that that there is no.
All I know is I sent out a tweet like maybe 2 hours before the press conference today, and it's sincere. I was totally sincere. Fire away with some questions, fans. I mean, I'll ask what I can. In a lot of time that we have. And the questions, oh my goodness, were have you put your house up for sale on Zillow yet? Have you put your? I mean, it's just unbelievable. There were some really, really pointed, most of which, have you? Would you settle, rather than 9.8 million, would you settle for like a 6-pack of beer and and a lottery ticket? I mean, these are the types of tweets that were just holy. Bro.
Wow.
Yeah.
The reservation.
I go back to my experience in my previous beat. Like, you get to a point where it's like some fans, like anything short of like Sarge or myself taking our shoe off and like throwing it at people during a press conference, they're going to say like, oh, that's too soft.
Which oddly you did do to Ben McAdoo. He really didn't, he caught it. To do his credit is the one thing I remember that when you herald, I'm kidding.
But no, I will say this though, to get back to what, just one quick tangent. I was thinking about this the other day, and you guys would know more better because you were around it. Did last year kind of hurt them in the sense that they kind of maybe lucked into those 3 Big Ten wins, and maybe it was a little bit of fool's gold that kind of maybe made them think that they were farther along than they were, and this is kind of the vicious, snapback of that? Maybe if they go 3-9 last year, maybe people are a little bit more ready for this.
They went 4-8. I mean, they went 2-10 year 1. They doubled their win total to 4. We're not talking about a team that defied the odds and went to the Orange Bowl. I mean, they won 4 games. No, it's a fair question. Right. I'm not scoffing at the question.
I mean, like if they beat Eastern Michigan but don't beat Purdue, like and they lose, they win one. They only beat Illinois and are 3-9. I mean, maybe this wasn't as high.
I think there's a semblance of the fan base that would have expected either Kansas or Buffalo, because we talked about it during the summer that one of those 2 games could be a trap game, and but so 2-2. Wouldn't have drawn this type of ire. 1-3 is just about as unexpected as no one saw that coming. No one.
No, absolutely. All right, Indiana preview. 41-0 last year in a game that lasted literally about 40 days and 40 nights with a lightning delay, and I look back on that. When I die and go to hell, I'm going to end up in that press box in Bloomington, Indiana. And I'm going to be sitting there in front of my laptop looking at the clock ticking on my reservation at St. Elmo's. That's where I'm going to go, folks. You know that's clearly what it's going to be. All right. So Kratch, give me a little bit. What do we know about Indiana as a team? Obviously, they thought they're going to be better, and they thought they might have a chance to beat Michigan State. Of course, they didn't happen. What's the story with the Hoosiers?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I didn't get to my same intense pre-podcast prep because the NCAA stat website, of course, crashed this morning. But they're 3-1. They kind of had a quirky schedule. I mean, they started the season at FIU. They beat Virginia at home. Their defense is a lot better. They run the ball pretty well. Stevie Scott, Morgan Ellison, their top tailback, has been suspended indefinitely for kind of undisclosed reasons all season. But they've kind of put this kid in who I believe was targeted by Rutgers as a defensive player. I think he's from New York State. He's a running back. He's really running the ball well for Indiana. Peyton, their quarterback, he's so-so. The defense is better. It's a good team, but I think, as you said, this past week against Michigan State, a lot of people thought, okay, this is like their statement. They've got the Spartans at home. Michigan State's not off to the hottest start, obviously, and Michigan State really just kind of took it to them. The game was 35-21, but Indiana added 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, so Michigan State really kind of handled them. So I think it's, again, Indiana is in that tier, that second tier of the Big Ten East. I think the problem for Rutgers is they thought they were in that tier, and now it looks like they've created a third tier.
They've created a third tier of the Big Ten.
Yeah, and
there's the podcast name, the third tier Rutgers podcast. All right, go ahead,
but no, we talked about this as kind of hollow now that they're 1-3 and no chance for a bowl probably, but these are the types of games that they need to win. For the formula for Rutgers, for at least for the next couple of years is going to be win their non-conference games and beat Indiana and beat Maryland, 2 teams that they've actually had a moderate amount of success with. And, so maybe if they're able to somehow, pull off a stunning win, which no one expects, but if they could do it, it would right the season for sure.
Is there a chance? Are you telling me there's a chance? As from the quote them in summer.
Yeah, I mean, if you buy into what Chris Ash was saying, I'm not saying I buy into it. He's talking about the number of mistakes and, again, not to harp on Jonah Jackson, really good kid, but jumping off false start, on that 4th and 1 where they had the Wildcat in, these are the types of plays that you just can't have happen. Can they cut down on their mistakes? I guess there's a chance. I think they're going to have to play, there's a formula, not turn the ball over and play better defense. But, again, this was an Indiana team that beat Rutgers when they were pretty good. They beat them 41-0 last year. So, I mean, it's a tough one.
I just go back to, I did this on Sunday. I said, I'm going to list Rutgers' strengths. And I wrote this in the film review. And I listed the strengths, and I just don't think that you line all those up and they provide a terribly realistic, way to cobble together an upset victory. I mean, yes, I guess Rutgers could win if they block a kick and return it for a touchdown. If Raheem Blackshear breaks a touchdown return, if they get lucky with a big play on offense. I mean, Adam Korsak pins like 5 punts inside the 5. I mean,
they get 4 turnovers. Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, it just feels like they don't have much to work their problems with right now. And that's why I just have a very hard time. Again, Vegas was right about Buffalo. Move that line up.
Wrong about Buffalo.
Okay.
Right.
That line opens up all of a sudden. Indiana was a 14-point favorite. They go up to 17 within like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I think that's about right.
All right. Do you want to make a score prediction, or did we even have to bother? I'll say 49-7. Anybody else?
Yeah, first time I'm picking Indiana to beat Rutgers. I don't know a final score. I think Indiana's gonna win pretty big though, probably 20, 3 touchdowns.
Okay, Kratch.
I will say Indiana wins 41-17.
Wow. Good. Another fun day in Piscataway. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll be back after the Indiana game to recap what happened in Piscataway. Steve Politti signing off for Keith Sargent and James Cratch. Thanks for listening.